Then you could just say that there are other revisions to the personnel consent agenda. So,
Yeah, there were.
all right, you could just say the revised, you could say revised personnel consent agenda, and that will be under revised personnel consent agenda. That's okay. Yeah, I didn't realize that there were other revisions on that.
Good evening. Welcome to this meeting of the Dare County Board of Education. Today is September 8th, 2020. We are meeting at First Flight Middle School, and the time is a little bit after 5 o'clock. We're sorry we're running a little late because we had a few technical difficulties. Present at this meeting are, I am here, B. Bass Knight, Chair of the Board. We have Mary Lon Balance, Vice Chair, David Twitty, Frank Hester, Harvey Hess, Margaret Lawler, Joe Tauber. Also joining us tonight are staff members Dr. Farley, Sandy Kinzel, Candy Tilley, Dr. Keith Parker, Georgia Sellers, Maureen Welch, Diane Childress, and Drew Husbeth, and we have our attorney, Richard Schwartz, with us this evening. As we go into this meeting, since we are virtual and just audio, I will ask each board member if you would, when you wish to say anything during this meeting, if you will simply be recognized by the chair to speak so that I may say your name and people will know who is speaking. I heard some comments from our last meeting where they couldn't distinguish voices and match them with people. So I think that in that way we can identify ourselves what we're saying. So if you would just raise your hand, be just like school. Recognize you to speak. We thank all of you who are joining us by phone tonight, and we are going to move forward with a moment of silence, please. Thank you. As is our tradition, we each have the opportunity to welcome people to our meeting, and tonight I have that privilege. And so I do want to welcome all of you. Everybody on this board and in the staff really wishes that all of you could be here with us tonight, but COVID-19 has some different plans for this very first meeting of the Dare County Board of Education for the 2020-2021 school year. But we thank all of you for sticking with us during these times of limited attendance in person. We're very excited to be meeting at First Flight Middle School today because this is the home of Dare County's Principal of the Year, Miss Diane Childress. And she's with us tonight, so we're going to give her a round of applause. Congratulations, Diane. We're really all very proud of you, and you do a great job. I want to say tonight that I know my board members join me in saying that we are so grateful for our teachers, our teacher assistants, our school staffs, our administrators, our students, and our families who are working together to make remote learning work. We all know remote learning is not an ideal situation, but I am continually thankful for the incredible positivity I hear from educators, from students, and from parents. The efforts that are being made by everyone is proof that working together, we can accomplish anything in Dare County. Thank you to each and every single one of you who is making remote learning successful. And even in pandemic times, we have much to celebrate. And tonight, we will kick off our school year with many reasons to celebrate. Please join me now in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. As we move forward, I have a statement that I need to read because we have some changes for tonight. We have received a request to amend the board agenda for the following reasons. To revise the personnel consent agenda under agenda item 9A. To revise the agreement between Dare County Schools and Gardner-Webb University under an agenda item 9C. And to add 2 new agenda items under new business. The 2 new agenda items are, under 12B, the revised 2020-2021 academic calendar, and under 12C, Fourth Amendment to the superintendent's contract. If anyone has any questions, please let me know. If not, I would like to request a motion to amend the agenda as requested. I'd like to recognize Mr. Talbert.
Madam Chair, I move we amend the agenda for the reasons requested.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor for Mr. Talbert. Mr. Twitty?
I second that.
And a second for Mr. Twitty. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously to amend the agenda. Now I will be seeking a motion to approve the amended agenda. Ms. Balance?
Madam Chair, I move we approve the amended agenda.
It's a motion from Ms. Balance and a second from Mr. Hester.
I second.
A second from Mr. Hester. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We have an amended agenda. As we look next, the next item on our agenda are the announcements. And Dr. Farley, we'll turn it over to you for announcements.
Thank you, Ms. Bassnight. Start with some great news. First off, I do also want to congratulate Diane Childress. Very proud of her, the work that she's doing. She's an outstanding leader and an even better person. So kudos to Diane. We're all proud of you. Some great news. The Dare County Schools graduation rate has gone up significantly over the past year. And as an LEA, we're at 94.9%, which is up from 90.5% the previous year. And some significant gains, particularly in 3 schools. Cape Hatteras Secondary went from 86.3 to 95.1.
Wow.
The Dare Learning Academy went from 47.6 to 75%, which is incredible.
That is,
I believe we had 16 graduates.
wow.
Manny High School went from 93.3 to 98.3. And First Flight High School is up a tick from 94.4 to 94.5. So very proud of that. The state rate is 87%. And with this information just being released, we're trying to track down where our standing is compared to other districts. And I'll report that out.
That's
at our next
fantastic
meeting.
news.
Yeah, very proud of that. Next, good news with our child nutrition program. So waiver was approved where we can continue our process similar to the summer feeding program of feeding all children in the county through December. We had some fears that by September 1st, we may have to revert back to a system where only children who are qualified for free and reduced meals would get that benefit. And so with this stay, we're able to provide meals to all children at our 3 feeding sites up to ages 18. So Cleta Govan and her staff have done a wonderful job, and that's really good news for our community. Next, the Dare Education Foundation, which Mr. Twitty and Mr. Tauber serve on that on the board of directors with myself, is named a new executive director, and she started today, Miss Barbara, and she will be joining us at our next meeting. Today was her first day, and we'll introduce her to the entire board in October. And then lastly on announcements is we project ahead on the possibility of being back in school by November, still yet to be determined. We're asking for cover the calendar amendments a little later. The primary intent of that is if we are back in school on election day, the Board of Elections is going to be using five of our facilities because of the need for space with the community. And so when we get to that agenda item, we've got a couple of revisions to the calendar looking ahead. And the concept for us on election day, if we are in school, is we're concerned about traffic patterns. The community would only be getting access to the gymnasiums. However, our school parking lots are generally full, and then you talk about thousands of people coming into different voting sites across the county, and we feel it's best if we are back in school that we change out a required workday and have that required workday on election day. So,
Dr. Farley, given the fact that our current motion to stay in remote learning runs through October 23rd, and if a decision were made to return to some sort of in-school, in-person instruction or a blended model, it would probably be helpful for this board to have a called meeting in early October to discuss all the possibilities and to give the staff time to make arrangements for whatever plan we want to take. Is that agreeable with this board to have a call meeting?
Madam Chair, David Twitty, I certainly agree with you. I would love to have a call meeting 1st of October to have a plan to get what we can do, get our kids back in their school.
And the meeting could be devoted simply to
reopening
reopening
schools
with no other
after first
business,
quarter.
as a special meeting.
Be a special meeting. Yes, ma'am.
Mark Waller, and I totally second that.
So if you have your calendars, is it okay to do this now? How about, okay, then the 5th is a Monday?
yes.
So like Monday or Tuesday of that week, does that work for everyone? Monday? Everybody have
I
calendars?
mean, anytime, Madam Chair, anytime that week of the 28th of September,
Okay.
28th, 29th, 30th, that just gives us more lead time for Dr. Farley and his staff to get things planned
So
together.
if-
I prefer to do it that week instead of waiting to the 5th of October, personally.
But you are not available that week.
I like the 2nd of October, personally.
I'm fine with 2nd October.
I can be available that morning.
Morning's fine.
We'll make it work.
We'll make it
Does
work.
that work
If
for
it
everybody, the
works for
morning of the
everybody.
2nd, that Friday?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Hess.
Notwithstanding proposed special meeting in October, I'm going to have something under new business at the end of the thing here, notwithstanding that, so about school opening.
Okay.
Okay.
Does the morning of October 2nd, yes, does that work for you?
Yeah.
Frank? Mr. Hester, excuse me.
Yes, that works for me.
All right.
Are we going to kind of outline some of the things we want to make sure that Dr. Farley is aiming towards for getting information? I mean, I'm thinking about, is he going to be gathering data to find out how many teachers may be already to come back? And, just different things. I know he's going to be preparing, but what, in essence, what do you need to be able to be in a position to have a good meeting to discuss true possibilities of going back?
Well, I think following the board's protocols, we should have a packet agenda meeting prior to that meeting to discuss the proposed agenda and then any other data or information that the board would like for me to present in that meeting. So certainly,
Yes.
we'll through that process, the board representatives will be able to share on any level of detail in a comprehensive presentation that we would put before the board on the 2nd.
I think that would set you up for success.
Yeah.
And I would encourage any comments that any board members have to send to the agenda committee, which is Joe Tauber, myself, B. Bass Knight, and Mary Ellen Balance. So send
glad
the
to do
comments
that.
in before them. We set a time? Can we say like 9 o'clock?
Sure.
October 2nd. Not January, October. Okay, that work? 9 o'clock, and Dr. Farley, where would you like to hold this meeting?
I'd say First Light High School.
First Flight High School.
Can socially distance very well there.
And it will be a special meeting. And
You say 9 o'clock, Madam Chair?
9 o'clock.
Thank you.
And
Okay.
that's Friday, October 2?
October 2nd, Friday. and depending on any executive orders between now and then, it would be either we would allow people in person in attendance, or it would be on virtual, correct? Audio for the public.
Sure. So with North Carolina moving to phase 2.5, the threshold is increased indoor from 10 to 25. Given the size of our crowd today and essential personnel, we would have an array of our curriculum directors who would have to be available in part of that meeting. So we're already talking probably upwards of 20 people with not being able to go over 25. So, I mean, that's for the board to make that determination.
And there was no ending date for 2.5, is my understanding. I listened to the governor's press conference,
Right.
but I didn't hear an ending date for phase 2.5. So,
Madam Chair, isn't he speaking again on the 15th?
September, he may be. I don't
My understanding,
know.
he will be speaking again on September the 15th.
And, okay.
So,
So-
but currently, following
currently
the
Right now,
executive
it's
order,
25.
Basically, right now, it's
It's
2.5.
25 max.
25.
Yes.
And we will need to have, as you said, curriculum directors,
Yes,
maybe some teacher representatives, possibly?
sure.
We can talk about that in fact.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, Madam Chair, do we have a
Mr. Tauber?
proposed date for the packet meeting? Do you want to do it a week before, the 25th? Or do you want to do it?
You got that?
We have the
We
legal
have that
women.
legal women voters. Right.
Yeah. How about the 23rd? Can we do it the same week? Well, you have a, okay.
We can
Because
do
there's a
24th,
leadership meeting that morning at 8, on the 28th.
24th, 20, I mean,
20
28th, 29th, 30th, any of those dates? Okay, so how about the
How about the
23rd?
23rd? Or the, 23rd. Does that work for you, Dr. Farley?
Sure.
You want to just let us know what time?
We could go with our typical 12 o'clock if that
Okay.
works.
All righty.
The
This is
agenda
for the
packet.
agenda
packet.
packet meeting. That will give time for us to get the agenda out to other board members, and they can look it over, get back to us. 12 o'clock. All
And
right.
Madam
Well,
Chair, it
sorry.
would be helpful to Mr. Twitty's comment about, in your response to requests from the board, so it would be helpful, right now, currently, the same options are on the table that
Right.
have been mandated by the governor. So we will be revisiting, if they don't change, the 5 options that we previously had covered in a very comprehensive manner. But it would be helpful if there's any other information that the board would like for our team to draw down. And to Mr. Hester's point, we have been tracking the number of staff that have identified themselves as being at risk and have to telework. Just anecdotally, about 50% of our teachers are currently coming in every day, 50% remotely. So, one of the things, if the board decides to return to some level of traditional schooling, what is critical for us from a timing standpoint is to try to determine how many families still would want to have virtual learning.
Yeah.
So as we plan ahead for staffing, your suggested timing of the October 2nd date is very helpful from a planning standpoint, because the reality is we may not, as you recall in our survey process, 30% of the parents had indicated that they preferred a virtual option. That number may go up or down based upon decisions and maybe where we are in time. But that is very impactful as far as being able to staff the virtual and then face-to-face, and then, of course, dependent upon the model. So I would expect us to revisit a lot of the options that we've previously discussed. And then it also may be helpful, make a recommendation that Dr. Sheila Davies join us, our director of the health department. She certainly, we've met several times, she's met with our administrators, and she, on a daily basis, is giving us a lot of information from the state and certainly local data. So, but happy
That
to
should
take
be a
any
good
requests.
addition. Yeah.
Also, Dr. Farley, David Twitty here. We will also have to revisit our virtual policy. I know that was on the table to adopt the policy for virtual learning.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
on that. Will we do that on the 2nd as well?
Yes, so that would be a part of decision-making. So currently, that is a mandate, that option is on the table, based upon the governors, the different organizations, the governor, the state board, Department of Public Instruction, and, excuse me, the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services. So that is part of the mandate still. So yes, we would have to, the board would have to approve that, whatever option we look at.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you very much. I didn't mean to digress, but I thought that was a good time to talk about that.
Sure.
Thank you. All right. Next item on our agenda is some of those celebrations I mentioned, and Dr. Parker, we'll turn it over to you for recognitions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're very excited to move into this portion of our program tonight, and we are going to recognize some outstanding staff members at First Flight Middle School, and we're going to ask Principal Diane Childers to come up and do that. The staff members are not joining us in the meeting tonight. They are listening virtually, and Principal Childers is going to share some things about those staff, and then we're going to deliver a certificate to them when they're return to work tomorrow. So, Principal Childers, if you would like to join us and share some information about recognitions tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Parker. Good evening, Madam Chairman, members of the board, Superintendent Farley, parents, and stakeholders. I'm thrilled to be here this evening to share several recognitions from First Flight Middle School. Our first recognition is Miss Leslie Wiles, our Teacher of the Year. Ms. Wiles worked at First Flight Elementary School for 16 years before moving to middle school 4 years ago. She is a National Board Certified Teacher, as well as a National Geographic Certified Educator. Ms. Wiles recognizes the importance of collaborating with community stakeholders and organizations. At least twice a month, whether it be to help enhance her content curriculum or to support a club that she sponsors, Ms. Wiles invites many different groups into her classroom. Some examples include Coastal Federation, Local Martin Society, local park rangers, Nest, and representatives from the Wolf Conservation Organization. She utilizes the outdoors as her classroom, observing wildlife through the North Carolina State Candid Critters program, and has sponsored the Wildlife Club and the Grounded Adventure Club, where students become scientists and focus on life skills such as leadership and teamwork. Ms. Wiles is a natural leader in our building, modeling best practices, taking risks in trying new strategies, and tackling the abundance of tasks that being a team leader requires. She does it all with passion and pride. She believes in the philosophy that everything that comes her way should be seen as a stepping stone, not a stumbling block. She won't give up. Rather, she is willing to fail, show grace, and have the courage to get back up and try again. I know she's out there listening, so Ms. Wiles, we're very, very proud of you. Next, I'd like to recognize Ms. Holly King, our Instructional Technology Facilitator. Ms. King came to First Flight Middle School last year as a STEM technology teacher, and when the ITF position opened up mid-year, she realized that this was her passion. Ms. King has many strengths and has been an absolute lifesaver during remote learning since March. Formerly a middle school science teacher, I always enjoyed spending time in her classroom because all of her students were actively engaged in their learning. She used blended learning to make content relevant, meaningful, and rigorous. She is an innovative teacher, becoming a leader in Dare to Innovate in 2018 and representing Dare at the DPI's Coaching for Remote Learning series. Now she is in a prime position to impact teaching and learning throughout our entire building as she works as an instructional coach and leads professional learning. Ms. King has given confidence to teachers who never used Google Classroom and now post assignments and give student feedback with ease. She is known for sitting down with a teacher who has a great idea and makes it even better. She regularly collaborates with others to create professional learning opportunities for teachers who are interested in taking risks and learning new digital strategies. She is a member of several professional organizations, which has allowed her to lead professional development at the local, regional, state, and national levels. Ms. King has a growth mindset, and she is a dedicated and reflective practitioner. She is a risk taker, and teachers appreciate her willingness to meet them where they are and make them even better. When Ms. King isn't working, she is on the board of the directors as membership chair of NEST. Ms. King, we are grateful for all that you do. Our last recognition goes to a group of women who, in the spring, decided to spearhead a garden project led by Miss Alyssa Hannon, our low-incidence exceptional children's teacher. Ms. Hannon finds each student's strengths and figures out what makes them tick. She uses task boxes, stations, one-on-one sessions, and small groups to meet the needs of her students academically, socially, emotionally, all while focusing on life skills. You will often see her teacher assistants, and her students throughout the building going to work each day. Her students participate in Special Olympics and the Disc Golf Club, where she highlights their abilities. Her most recent highlight is the work that she and this wonderful team of teachers and teacher assistants did to create a garden project. Not only did she earn a grant to purchase the necessary equipment, but she and her team spent days last spring and throughout the summer preparing for her project. She and her family dug up and replanted the front flower bed. She and 4 of her assistants, Jen Midget, Karen Rogers, Kim McGee, and Cece Slagle, dug up, weeded, and replanted our memorial garden out back. And lastly, she and her family, several assistants, and Miss Harris, one of our PE teachers, created a space and built a raised bed for a vegetable garden. Her goal is to allow all of her students access to the raised beds and create a vegetable garden for when we return face to face. Ms. Hannon and your team, we are so grateful for your leadership and how you are working to make a difference for us all. Thanks for all you do. That is the end of our recognitions. Would you like us to move into the instructional program, Dr. Parker?
Well, we want to say congratulations to all of those wonderful teachers. Thank you, Diane. And now we can move into the instructional highlights.
Okay. Ms. Hudspeth is going to join me. We're going to share this.
You could look at it. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it on this screen.
Oh, we can see well enough.
Okay.
So the board will be able to see the presentation on the screen. Is that correct, Dr. Parker?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
I'll pull out the paper copy, and Ms. Hudspeth will pull out the digital copy.
That's how we do.
The principal here is very flexible.
Yes.
Yes, sir. I build on the strengths of others. Are we good?
This will be as large as we can project here. Our folks that are joining us on the internet are seeing really nice.
That's fine. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, our instructional program this evening will focus on remote learning. The good news is that this fall is definitely more structured than the spring, but starting the year remotely brings a whole new meaning to the processes of getting to know students, building trust with the teacher, as well as teaching routines and procedures.
So we would like to share with you a day in the life of a student, a parent, and a teacher during remote learning. Let's start with a student. So each day, our students' expectation is that the first thing they do, just like when you walk into this building and you go into a classroom, we've explained to them that Google Classroom is their classroom. So the first thing that they should do each day is go into their classrooms and fill out a daily attendance form. We've created an attendance form for each class that has students for every class that they have. And it's not only is it a check-in for them to say that they were in class, but it's also a check-in to see how the kids are doing. We've got questions like, how are you doing? Is there anything you want us to know? Because we found that students and teachers And most people feel more comfortable doing it in a form and doing a private survey than doing it in Google Meets in a chat room. So that's the first thing, is they log into their classroom and they do their attendance form. Then we encourage them to check their email daily, participate actively in Google Meets, utilize the teacher office hours. All of our teachers have office hours from 12:30 to 2, so we utilize them. A lot of teachers are using small group sessions. They leave their Google Classrooms up so the students can pop in and ask questions and get some extra help one-on-one, complete all work in a timely manner, and most definitely participate in Wacky Wednesdays. We started Wacky Wednesdays last week with Hat Day, and we got a lot of participants, and tomorrow we're hoping to see some crazy hair days.
All right. At the middle school level, we are encouraging students to reach out to their teachers if they have questions or need help. But just like teachers have to differentiate in the classroom, we are grateful to our parents who are having to help students with executive functioning skills, creating a routine, and even with academic support at times. All of us at First Flight Middle School are committed to supporting parents through this process, and we're doing it in a variety of ways. Drew and I create weekly videos and an email blast for parents with updates and reminders. Some teachers are sending out surveys to parents asking for feedback. All of our teachers at each grade level participate and put information on a week at a glance, and that week at a glance is on a website that we have with all sorts of resources for parents. We also are keeping information up to date on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And last spring, Ms. Holly King helped us with an app that can be seen or had on parents' phones. And so when you get to the app, you can go to the website and vice versa. You can get to the website and then go to the website and then get to the app. So we're trying to keep this as updated as possible so that parents who have questions might be able to find answers all in a one-stop shop.
Okay, next we have the teachers. Ms. Stacy Jones, who has returned to the classroom recently, had this to say about her typical day during remote learning. She teaches 6th grade social studies. So Mr. Parker, if you'll click on her name.
Is this going to be a video?
It's a audio.
Okay. All right, so
Oh. You want me to just read it?
that'd be great.
Okay. So I get up early and I answer emails from the night before by 8:30 when my school day starts. I love being in the building and following the remote learning schedule, which gives me a routine during what could be a 24/7 job right now. My day consists of a lot of screen time, collaboration, and team planning, giving meaningful feedback to students, and constant emails. My favorite part of each day is the Google Meet, where I spend time interacting with my students. It doesn't replace the face-to-face, but we are getting to know each other and holding discourse. In addition to teaching my content, I can tell that I'm helping my students with organizational life skills as well. They say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but this dog is loving the new technology tricks that she's learning. Teachers are required to follow their school day as much as possible. In addition to the requirements of creating flipped video lessons for new instruction, holding at least one Google Meet per week, and offering meaningful and relevant feedback to students, they are also required to participate in grade level and content PLCs. This is where teachers collaborate to make sure that they are on the same page with pacing and planning, discuss pedagogy, and problem solve when it comes to student concerns. Our teachers want to make sure that their students are successful. They are responding to emails, holding more Google Meets, and modifying assignments as needed to help students and parents adjust.
All right, we have compiled a variety of photos and videos of what we consider to be exemplars. Here are some examples of strategies, lessons, and activities that teachers are using to engage their learners.
may not be able to play the video.
Okay.
Yep. Can you conclude with some comments and I'll troubleshoot? Can you give me 2 minutes?
Sure. We included some examples of lessons where teachers did drop and drag or drag and drop. We have a social studies team that is doing a weekly TikTok challenge to engage their learners, and the kids that participate in the Google Meet get to vote on the next week's TikTok.
Some examples of some of our teachers' virtual classrooms that they've created with their Bitmojis. We included some pictures of the kids from Wacky Wednesday last week. Our art teacher, Miss Stewart, has started doing an Artist of the Week for each grade level. So we included last week's Artist of the Week.
All right.
It's a great video.
We're really proud of the work that our teachers have put into this. I think they did a phenomenal job in the spring, and they are off to an amazing start now. So we appreciate their hard work. All right, so that is the end of our slideshow. We appreciate your attention and giving us an opportunity to share what's happening at First Flight Middle School. May we answer any questions for you?
Any questions?
Dr. Parker, do you want me to message it to you? And then you send it out to everyone?
I'm afraid that's not the word.
Technical difficulties, right? Exactly. When you really need it to work, it just doesn't. Oh, thank you very much, Diane and Drew. We appreciate that, and we appreciate all the teachers that are doing a lot of work. I mean, I think I was still in the classroom. I'm not sure I'd be like those, old dog learning new tricks. Mr. Twitty?
Yes, I'd have to say thank y'all so much for the hard work, Diane and Drew, for the work y'all done in all of our other schools. You can see community-wide it's been a lot with the staff and the students and the parents, but, you know, they're going through it really strong, and we're making it happen. So thanks again.
That's right, yeah. Okay, anyone else? All right, thanks so much. We appreciate the time and effort you ladies have put into all of this as well. The next item on our agenda is public comment, and we have received public comment. Since the public cannot be here to present it, we are going to ask Dr. Parker if he will read the items of public comment for the board, and I will read the guidelines prior to his reading of the comments. The Dare County Board of Education welcomes comments from our parents, students, and community. The public comment period is open for members of the public, including parents and students, to voice compliments, concerns, or complaints about performance of school personnel, implementation of board policy, the quality of the education program, or school facilities. Each person or organization is granted 3 minutes for his/her presentation. This portion of the meeting is for the board to hear matters of interest from the public. However, obscene, vulgar, or profane statements and statements reasonably perceived to be disruptive or imminently threatening to the orderly operation of the meeting shall not be permitted. And Dr. Parker, will you please begin with the public comments?
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair, we had 6 public comments that were submitted to us on the website or through email, and I will start with those in the order that we received them. This is the first public comment that was that we're going to read tonight, which was submitted by Patricia Gale. And she said, "I would like to go on record stating that I understand the negative connotations of the Redskins name. I do not understand why the Braves name is offensive. I would suggest that keeping one of the local Native American tribe names for the Manio High School athletics to maintain the heritage of our area as well as honoring those individuals. I would also like to suggest that no decision be made by the board in a virtual meeting, as this discriminates against those individuals who do not have the access to technology. I feel that any decision should be postponed until everyone interested would be allowed to attend and express their own personal opinion. Thank you. Patricia Gale, Dare County resident and N.C.G.S substitute teacher. The next public comment that we're going to read was submitted by Gregory Richardson, the Executive Director of the North Carolina Commission of Indian Affairs. And this is his public comment. Dear Chairwoman Bass Knight and Dare County Board of Education members, the North Carolina Commission of Indian Affairs was created in 1971 by the North Carolina General Assembly to deal fairly and effectively with Indian affairs. The article by Catherine Kozak of the Coastal Review Online as of 9/2/2020 entitled Manio Mascots has been shared with our commission. The commission agrees with the following statements in the petition presented to you as the Dare County Board of Education members, which stated that the use of the mascots for the Manio Redskins and Braves sports teams in Dare County is deeply harmful to the cause of creating sustainable and positive race relations in our community, and these mascots should be retired. The commission highly recommends that the district increase education about regional, state, and national American Indians and their culture. American Indian descriptions naming mascots, logos, and sports team nicknames are detrimental to the self-identity, self-concept, and self-esteem of American Indians. Please refer to the State Advisory Council on Indian Education report to the North Carolina State Board of Education entitled 2020 Vision for Culturally Responsive Classrooms through Tribal Consultation on page 71 for more information on the use of mascots. The North Carolina State Board of Education approved a recommendation in June 2002 that public school administrators and local boards of education should review their policies and procedures toward the use of American Indian sport mascots, logos, and other demeaning imagery. The North Carolina Commission of Indian Affairs strongly encourages the Dare County Board of Education to retire all existing American Indian mascots, logos, and sports team nicknames presently being utilized by the Dare County Public School System. Sincerely, Gregory Richardson. The next public comment we'll read is from Kim Wooten, and she has submitted this. I would like the board to consider children that are in the exceptional children's self-contained classrooms to have some in-school instruction. There is no possible way that IEP goals are being met through virtual learning. Other counties like Nash County are making accommodations, and their COVID-19 counts and COVID-19 deaths are significantly higher than Dow County. End of comment. Our next comment is by Dan Gale and says this: it has come to my attention that the possibility of a name change is on the docket for tonight's meeting. While I understand that the name Redskin is considered and slur may be wanting to change tonight, the Native American influence on Manio School name should not be changed. I suggest the name be changed to the Chiefs. This would honor Chief Manio and Chief Wanchese. Roanoke Island has 3 towns, Manio, Wanchese, and Skyco, all 3 Native American influences. A large number of roads have a Native American influence. We have had the Lost Colony play for years. This area has a great Native American influence, and to try to take that away would provide a great disservice to everyone. Thank you. The next public comment is from Melissa Mann. And Melissa says this: good evening. I am writing this email because I could not find the form mentioned for public comment for tomorrow's meeting. Ms. Bass Knight asked me to forward my comments through email to you. I have heard that the Manio High School name change is on the agenda for tomorrow's meeting, and as a Teacher of the Year for Manio High School, I felt compelled to voice my concerns. I definitely understand the slur that our name is, and in no way would I ever want to play a part in hurting anyone. However, the towns on Roanoke Island, streets, and other areas are named after Native Americans, and we are the Lost Colony. So I think we need to preserve that heritage and keep a name that is consistent with it. I am fully aware that we should change our name and understand the outrage. I feel I have the perfect solution. Manio was a chief, and I feel we should continue to honor him and the town named after him by changing our name to the Chiefs. In doing this, we would get rid of the slur, but still hold on to our Native American heritage. I honestly do not feel we should change our name to anything nautical or flight related. This does not fit with our little island. Again, I say, we are the lost colony, and we need to preserve our Native American history as much as we can, not erase it. If you don't like the Chiefs, that is perfectly fine, but please, whatever you decide to change our name to, please keep a Native American mascot. Thank you for your time and consideration of this matter. Please feel free to contact me should you have any questions. And our final public comment tonight is submitted by Judy Cage. Hello. I was unable to find the comment link and was given this address by Ms. Bassnight. Please have the Change the Mascot group answer the following questions for transparency and clarity. 6 questions are listed. Here's the first. What are the full names of the presenters? Number 2, in what state and county do they currently reside? Number 3, do they have students attending either Manio High School or Manio Middle School? Number 4, are they registered members of an American Indian tribe? Number 5, what percentage of the people that signed their online petition reside in Dare County? What proof can they provide that the signatures were obtained from people invested in this issue and not just participating in a trend? Number 6, if they graduated prior to 2020, why did they wait until now to advance their cause? Madam Chair, that concludes the public comments we received submitted through the website.
Thank you, Dr. Parker. Is it possible to get copies of those for my files, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We'll be glad to make those available to you.
Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is the approval of the consent agenda as revised. The consent agenda consists of the personnel consent agenda, the minutes from June 24th, 2020 special meeting, July 20th, 2020 special meeting, August 20th, 2020 special meeting, the approval of the agreement between Dare County Schools and Gardner-Webb University, the approval of the new grade XG extra grade in Eddy, the approval of a donation from Kitty Hawk Elementary School PTA, and the approval of the 5-year contract with Link. You all have the information in your packets on each of these, and I think it's been available to the public.
Madam Chair, I move we approve the consent agenda.
Motion on the floor to approve by Mr. Twitty. It's a
revised.
As revised. Okay, by Mr. Twitty. Second. And a second by Mrs. Balance. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much.
Announce the motion passed unanimously.
I'm sorry, the motion passed unanimously. Thank you. Item number 10 is reports and item for information, and Dr. Farley will give us a report on the opening of school.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can say in 28 years of education, this is unlike any other start of a school year.
Exactly.
And certainly as a 12-year superintendent. We spent much of the summer, as we highlighted in our July 20th meeting, trying to be as prepared as we could, following the state guidelines and mandates, and with the board's decision to start in remote. I feel like we have done, our staff, our teachers, our leaders have been absolutely highly effective and amazing in trying to get in a position where we can increase our standards and our expectations for remote learning. It is much different. If you recall last spring, March 13th, when we were it was thrust upon us to go into remote as a state, felt like we were very prepared. And that speaks to a lot of the work that we've done for 2 years with our teachers' professional development, speaks to their ability to adapt and be flexible. And so coming out of that experience, and we surveyed all our stakeholders, we spent much of the summer planning for what this could look like if this was going to be an option for us. To reiterate what Ms. Bassnight said, we all know Children learn best when they're in front of teachers in their classrooms, and that's where we want to be when we can get there. In the meantime, we've tried to put together a comprehensive plan. We've released 2 guidebooks, a guidebook for parents and students, which is 25 pages long, very extensive, and we did the same for staff, and we termed that staff return to school safely. We took our first week to have an orientation and training week, and so during that week, we provided a multitude of videos on different platforms so that parents and students alike were prepared in advance to know what to expect and what our standards were going to be and the expectations, our schedules. Every teacher in Dare County called their students home, K-8. All of our teachers called parents to connect with them, talk about their child's needs, flexibility if needed in remote learning, explain what our standards and expectations were going to be for attendance and schedules and assignments. And at the high school level, our teachers called, if they didn't speak with parents, then they spoke to several students directly. Every single teacher in Dare County also produced an opening video as a way to welcome parents and kids to their classrooms. Our staff did an amazing job with that. And as we moved through that week, actually at the beginning of that orientation and training week, we distributed Chromebook to any student in Dare County who needed one. So every student has had access to a device, and we've also provided Wi-Fi for families who do not have internet in their homes. And the numbers are up this year compared to last spring. We distributed many more Chromebooks, and we're almost doubled the number of Wi-Fi devices that we've distributed. And because demand was so high in some schools, we did initial distribution on a day for parents, and then we had to shuffle some machines around based upon the school. N.C.G.S and Kitty Hawk were 2 where we had to send a significant number, no, Manual Elementary and N.C.G.S where we had to send a significant number of Chromebooks to that school from other locations. But we did that very successfully, and our technology department, led by Dr. McBride, and all the librarians done amazing work, and they did most of the platform videos and continue to do that for staff, students, and parents. We are taking attendance daily. It looks different at each level, so it's a combination of live meetings and pre-recorded lessons and/or assignments or assessments. Every parent is getting access to the upcoming week's schedule so they can plan as needed for the upcoming week. So all our teachers submit those to parents in advance. Our teachers are keeping parent communication logs. We've systemically, K-12, required digital lesson plans to be submitted, which our principals and our school administrators access, review. Many of our administrators jump into a lot of the live sessions that we have. The thrust of learning is primarily in the morning. Everyone does not have to be on a device all morning, so it depends upon what level you're at. So an example, an elementary student may have a class meeting for a half hour in the morning and then a 45-minute session following that. And then based upon student learning needs, we've got various times in the day where we can double down in providing small group instruction, remediation, so on and so forth. We, at the elementary level, we have not, we're not introducing new material on Fridays, so we're using that as catch-up day and remediation and extra help for kids that need it, so that's been very beneficial. Diane did a great job of describing what a day looks like here at the middle school level. At our high schools, we've got teacher planning from 8 to 9, and then students are in 4 blocks from 9 to 12:15. And then in the afternoon, they've got enrichment and small group remediation and so on. We did shift to so that we were consistent. So when we were thrust into this in the spring, there's various platforms that are out there with the use of technology that teachers can access. And one of the things that when we read through our parent survey responses, they wanted more consistency in the use of the platforms. So at each grade, each level, elementary, middle, and high, we've got a specific platform that they're using. we've tried to provide as many training modules as possible so that people know how to access, get their students into a live setting, whether it's Google Classroom or Canvas or wherever it may be. So each level has got consistent platforms that we're using across the board. And that's been a few growing pains, depending upon if your child didn't have access to a Google Classroom last year, and this year they do, then we've provided a lot of training up front. We have flexibility based upon how we deliver instruction because we know not every single student in Dare County Schools is going to be available necessarily. I mean, reality is we still have high school kids who are working. That's real. So we've got various ways that we're communicating with parents and students about flexibility between live and recorded lessons. All our teachers are asked to provide timely feedback to students. And then all of our teachers, as Diane mentioned, have got available office hours. And so the office hours are a couple of hours block of time typically where parents and or students can jump in and call their teacher, email, get an instant response on content, assignments, wherever it may be. And that's gone very well. We're also, depending upon a level with the time, we're still doing a lot of professional development with our staff. Last year, between March 13th and May 24th, we produced about 50, our teachers and our leaders produced about 50 different, a buffet of options, about 50 different professional development initiatives that we've got in our library. So a teacher could go in and jump into a Google Meet and 45 minutes on a particular platform or ideas about how to deliver content in a certain area. And as we get into, we did not want to we mandated training before we started school. We're still just 2 weeks in. As we progress into weeks 3 and 4, we're going to start pushing some more of that out. Thursdays is our targeted date for professional development, but I would say I could speak with confidence that what we've delivered with professional development is second to none as we look at other deliverables from different districts across the state. So, you know, it's a struggle because there's no substitute for live teaching and being in schools and socializing with kids. And we are trying to maximize everything that we can deliver and supporting families. And with our, a lot of our students in the Exceptional Children's Program, based upon lessons learned from March to May, we've got several meetings that are going on where we're putting additional supports in, and that many of those meetings have to be a formal IEP meeting. So our exceptional children's teachers are doing a lot of juggling, but we're confident in the additional supports that they're putting in place. And, you know, we're on a daily basis, our teachers are dedicated professionals, whether they're in buildings working together or they're delivering remotely. And we've got the best teachers in North Carolina and Dare County Schools. And it's not perfect, but I would put our program up against any other in the state. And we'll continue to progress forward and take until the board makes a decision on taking a different direction. And when we get there, we'll be prepared, we'll deliver, and we'll do the right thing. So be happy to take any questions from board.
Thank you, Dr. Farley. One thing I'd like to say is I think it was a very wise decision to take the first week of school for orientation.
Yeah.
And allow the teachers to be able to connect with the students and the teachers to become familiar with the platform of remote learning. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, we got a lot of really good feedback on that, especially from staff.
Yeah.
I'd like to point out that I think it's
Mr.
important-
Tauber
Oh, sorry.
is talking.
I just started talking.
Turn your mic on too, Joe.
It is on. I just think it's so important for the teachers to communicate with the students and the students' parents. I just thought that was just an incredible reach out by the teachers to the students, just to get acquainted with them and just see what their needs are, and it's just great effort.
Absolutely.
Mary Ellen Balance. I'm going to put her, Ms. Childress, on the spot here for a second. What kind of feedback are you getting back from parents and teachers? You got to use my mic.
I would say it's a mixture. I think what we're noticing is that when you're in a classroom with a group of students, The teacher's job is to differentiate for all the needs of students. And you can do that more easily when you get to know your kids and you're interacting with them and use groups, et cetera. You can look at their body language and their face, whether they understand, whether they don't. Starting, in the spring, the kids already knew the teachers. So the teachers could connect in ways already having that background. This is more tricky because the students don't know their teachers and the teachers are trying to learn and we're trying to adapt. And so as soon as you make a change or an adjustment, it works for some and not everybody. And so I think what we're encouraging students and parents to do is to reach out to teachers, because Drew and I in one afternoon can receive an email that says, way too much work. And that same afternoon we get another parent who says, my kid's bored, there's not enough work. And so this is where it's really hard to differentiate. And so it's still a learning curve. I mean, it's, in talking to a teacher today, backing up, trying something, figuring it out. And I think that's happening with students, teachers, and parents. And so we just appreciate the communication. We're trying to communicate, over-communicate, but we need others to communicate with us. And I would say that's across the board with every school. And then try to adapt, but adapt for, it's hard to adapt for everybody. So our teachers are working really, really hard. And when we give them feedback, we just had a staff meeting today, and some of the feedback was really, really positive, and some of it was not as positive. And instead of saying, oh, well, it was me, we're trying to help them understand, we need to listen, and we need to try to figure it out. And we're working as a team, and I think as long as we continue to do that, we're gonna make the best of this situation that's not a really great situation, so.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Well done.
Any other comments? No? Okay, well, thank you, Dr. Farley.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. We'll move on to unfinished business, and we have first reading of proposed policy manual updates related to the new Title IX regulations, and Ms. Kinzel's going to lead us through this, again, this meeting.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. I'm actually going to tag team with Mr. Schwartz
All
for
right.
this. After our last meeting on August 20th, where Mr. Schwartz provided you with an overview of some of the details related to Title IX and some of the policies that we needed to put in place that would help us to regulate and put processes in place for a grievance should one develop under these particular guidelines. Once we had that overview, we came back to the table. We scheduled a meeting with the policy committee, and Mr. Schwartz and his team assisted us with some policies that helped collapse about 9 policies into 5. Actually, we presented 13 new policies, and we end up with 9. 4 of them were kind of eliminated due to the work of Mr. Schwartz's team. So I think anytime we can do with less, it's best. We're not missing anything important. So for the board's consideration this evening, we have several of the 9 new policies that now have been reviewed by our attorneys and by the policy committee. There were several questions that the board was asked during the presentation on August 20th. And so the policy team, the policy committee helped to make some of those decisions for the board's consideration in adopting. For that reason, we're going to present these policies for your first read. Many of the revised policies that are impacted by these new policies, as well as the rescinded policies and regulations associated with those, are still intact here, but we're going to focus on those new policies because we think that's the most important part. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Schwartz and ask him to give us a synopsis of the policies.
Okay. We have a number of policies. The first 5 policies that are on the agenda And they are I'm just going to read the first of the numbers on these, not all of them. 1710, prohibition against discrimination, harassment, and bullying. 1720, discrimination, harassment, and bullying complaint procedures. 1725, Title IX, sexual harassment, prohibited conduct, and reporting procedures. And 1726, Title IX, sexual harassment grievance process. And 1730, non-discrimination on the basis of disabilities. For those first 5 policies, they were discussed at the policy committee meeting regarding Title IX regulations on September 2nd with Ms. Bassnight, Ms. Balance, and Mr. Tauber. The discussion by the policy committee is, I'm going to try and summarize what that was and go through each of those one at a time. So for 1710, the prohibition against discrimination, harassment, and bullying, there were no changes to the board materials. This is a new policy for Dare County Schools. No changes were made to this policy during the policy committee meeting. There were no points of discretion for the board to discuss or determine, so no choices to be made. Dare County Schools intends to name multiple Title IX coordinators, not just one, which is allowable under the new federal regulations. And the names of those who are serving in that role are named in the policy with contact information. And they are listed on page 5 as Sandy Kinzel, Dr. Keith Parker, and Kelly Flora. So those will be the 3 Title IX coordinators on page 5 of that policy. Moving on to Board Policy 1720, discrimination, harassment, and bullying complaint procedure. There were no changes that were made to the board materials. This too is a new policy for Dare County Schools. The timeline to file an appeal was changed from 5 days to 3 days in order to be consistent with the timelines to file an appeal set forth in new policy 1726, which is the Title IX sexual harassment grievance process. Days in this policy are defined as working days. Moving on to the next one, it's 1725, the Title IX sexual harassment prohibited conduct and reporting process. This is a new policy for Dare County Schools. The policy defines the conduct that's prohibited by the new Title IX regulations and the reporting process. The policy committee discussed that they do not want to expand this policy and expand the jurisdiction of Title IX beyond the United States for any school trips that might occur outside of the United States to be covered by this policy. A revision was made in section...
Other way.
Excuse me, it's the other way.
I'm sorry, other way, excuse me. Yeah, okay.
We want it
Excuse
to
me, I'm
extend
sorry,
because
I'm
we
sorry.
have overseas trips by our
Got it.
students.
Sorry about that. Apologize for that. A revision was made to section E1, which is on page, begins on page 5 and moves on to page 6 of this policy to reflect current practice. That is that all students have access to the anonymous tip line, not just middle and high school students. There are specific supportive measures available to complainants and respondents that are listed in the last item on the policy agenda, which is Regulation 1725 that goes with this policy. Information about the formal complaint process, the Title IX coordinator is required to provide to a complainant when initiating the interactive process upon the filing of a report was also placed in the regulation and removed from the policy. It was former section F1D, and that's now being moved to the regulation 1725R. 1726, hold on one second. Okay, 1726 is Title IX sexual harassment grievance process. There were no changes to the board materials. This is a new policy for Dare County. It sets forth the grievance process for formal Title IX sexual harassment complaints. The policy committee recommends a 30-day timeline within which to file a complaint. That's in section B2, and that's consistent with, that's on page 2, and that is consistent with the timeline that's set forth in the new policy 1720. It's consistent with the North Carolina School Boards Association recommendations and recommendations from our firm. The policy committee recommends no hearing until the appeal stage, and the language in section C2 was revised to reflect that. The policy committee recommended timeline of 90 days for the adjudication of complaints was preferable, as suggested by the School Boards Association and Schwartz and Shaw in section C8 on page 5. The policy committee does not recommend extending the 10-day deadline for the exchange of the review of evidence that's set forth in step 5 of the investigative process, which is at section D5, B as in Bravo and D as in Delta. Policy committee does not recommend offering the parties a live in-person hearing at the adjudication phase, which is section E. The language providing that was omitted. The recommendation was made for the parties to have the opportunity to request a live or in-person hearing upon appeal. The policy committee recommends an evidentiary standard regarding the determination of responsibility of clear and convincing evidence as opposed to the preponderance of the evidence, which is in section E2, which is on page 10. And the policy committee recommends offering an informal resolution, that's in section H, except in cases when a complainant alleges an employee sexually harassed a student. Margaret?
I have a question about this when you're finished.
Okay. Moving on to policy 1730, which is non-discrimination on the basis of disabilities. There were no changes to the recommended board material, to the board materials or the recommendation from the School Board Association and Schwartz and Shaw. The next policy is 4331, assaults, threats, and harassment. In section B, I'm sorry, at the beginning, in the very first sentence of this, I would recommend changing the first sentence to say the board will not tolerate assaults, threats, or harassments by any student instead of from any student, because it's not a threat to the board. It's a threat to another student. So that's one recommendation. If you look at section B, as in Bravo, on page 2, there's a blank there in the first sentence, and it should be the disciplinary consequences for violations of this policy shall be consistent with section, it should say E, of policy 4300, student behavior policies. Again, that's on page 2 of policy 4331. For policy 4340, school level investigations, no changes. For policy 4040, staff-student relations, no changes. And for policy 4001, equal educational opportunities, no changes. For the revised policies, 1742, responding to complaints, no changes to board materials. 1740, student and parent grievance procedures, no changes. 1745, First Amendment appeal procedure, that's renumbered from 1745 /4015 to just 1745. There were no changes to the board materials. For policy 1760/7280, prohibition against retaliation. Hold on one second, let me get to that one. I'm moving too fast here. Okay, on page 1 in the second paragraph, this is 1760/7280, prohibition against retaliation. On page 1 in the second paragraph, the 8th line, conduct is misspelled. It needs an N.
1760. And in the second paragraph, it's in red in this paragraph.
In the, it's in red,
Yeah.
the third line in red on that
Right.
page. On the next, other than that, no changes. On the next one, policy 43, that's in the, and that was in the cross references. In policy 4300, student behavior, in section D as in Delta, there are some additions you can see there in the second paragraph. Parent, parentheses S, the parentheses needs to be fixed. That's the second to last red line on that page.
Yeah.
Policy 4342, student searches, which was formerly named investigation. There are no changes to the board materials. The rescinded policies that are included in your materials would be 1758, sexual harassment, the former Title IX definition. 1760, harassment and bullying, is now 1760/7280, prohibition against retaliation. The regulations, 1730, 4022, 7231R, which is section 504, impartial hearing procedures. Previously, that was 4001-R. There are no changes to the board materials. And in regulation 1725, 4035, 7236R, Title IX, sexual harassment, prohibited conduct and reporting process. There's no strike through. There are no changes to the board materials. This regulation gives examples of the supportive measures that should be offered to a complainant and respondent, and the information about the formal complaint process the Title IX coordinator must share with the complainant during the interactive process. And that is the second to last, begins the second to last page in these materials. At the end of section A, there is a bracketed thing that says district administration could determine additions or deletions from this list. That should be removed. In the bracketed part under number 10 should be, under A10 should be removed.
What was the one under 4331, the recommended change that you had?
4331.
Section E.
Policy 4331?
The
Assaults, threats, and
recommended change
harassment.
for the- From,
In section B, consequences, there's a blank on page 2, section B, Bravo, consequences. On the first line, there's a blank where it says section blank of policy 4300. That should say section E.
wasn't there another one about, you should say, about saying from the board or to?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, that's on the first page in the first line. The board will not tolerate assaults, threats, or harassment by any student.
And I have one more question, just for the people at home listening, because this was something that when I was going through board policy was kind of confusing. Can you explain the difference between a board policy and a board regulation?
Yes. A policy is what's determined by the board. A regulation, the administration has, superintendent has authority to implement regulations based on the board policy and consistent with the board policy. The regulations are generally the nuts and bolts of how to implement the policy. The policy are the guidelines that the board adopts. So the regulations are the nuts and bolts procedures within the confines of the policy.
But
The board doesn't have to approve the regulations. Traditionally, you do, but you don't have to. The administration likes to have these regulations approved so that it's clear that what the administration has come up with, the board is in agreement with and doesn't have any concerns with and has blessed, basically. But under your board policy, the administration does have the authority to adopt regulations on its own.
So the regulations are implementations of the policy.
Yes.
So if he implements one of his regulations, it doesn't require board approval for him to implement that regulation?
It does not.
Right. And then that's just, I mean, I understand, I just want to make sure people at home, because
Right.
that's a confusing one.
Okay.
But my practice, as Rich referenced, is to take all the regulations to the board, so.
Yes, and you always have always done.
Yep, yep. John Farley.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Farley, for identifying yourself. And Ms. Balance was asking the questions. And this is Ms. Bassnight. Okay. Any other comments?
This is Richard Smith. Ms. Lawler, I think you had a question earlier,
right.
or did it get answered?
For those of you on the computer, it's page 81. It's policy 1726, page 8.
1726.
Yeah.
Hold on a second, let me get there.
Page 81, you said?
If you're on the computer, page 81.
Well, I was on paper, but I'm
You
going
can't hear me?
to flip to
1726, where in the policy, if you're not on the computer?
D.
D is in Delta, the
D.
grievance
Step
process.
4, D.
Okay.
Okay.
Step 4 is at page 8 of the policy.
Conducting the investigation.
Okay.
In the second sentence, it says information may be shared only with individuals who need the information in order to investigate and address the complaint appropriately, and those with a legal right to access the information. Who are the first people that they're talking about, the individuals? Is that anybody, or is that a
I'm trying
parent?
to find it. Where are you in
I'm sorry,
section?
D?
Lowercase d.
Oh, lowercase d.
I'm
okay.
sorry,
D
yeah,
under step 4.
Step 4,
Okay,
D.
on page 8, lowercase d, second sentence, okay,
Yes,
now I got you.
yeah.
Okay, information may be shared only with individuals who need the information in order to investigate. Okay, so those would be the assigned investigators.
Okay.
And address the complaint appropriately, and those with a legal right to access the information. That would be, under the new Title IX regulations, that would be the complainant, the respondent, their representatives.
Okay. I just
Okay.
didn't, it didn't say investigate, okay.
It could also include, if it's FERPA information, it could also include the parents. So those would be the people with the legal right.
Okay, and I have one more question. On page 87, for anybody on the computer. Section H,
In the same policy?
yes.
Okay. So that would be
Page 87.
In
It's
what
page
policy
section?
14, page 14.
Yeah,
1726, page 14,
H.
informal
And
resolution,
Section
right.
H. I was just curious when it said that you have to have a formal complaint first, but then you could have an informal resolution.
Right.
How, could you give me an example of what that would be?
Well, an informal resolution can be anything, but under the new Title IX regulations, it's a little bit strange under the new Title IX regulations. If you have a report, and the process is you have a report, the Title IX coordinator deals with the report, makes appropriate notifications, talks to the complainant, that is the alleged victim, and the respondent, the alleged perpetrator, and provides supportive measures to each, and then determines whether or not the complainant wants this reduced to, or ratcheted up to, a formal complaint. That is a signed complaint that then gets moved along. Under the new regulations, you're not allowed to have an informal resolution unless you have something that has been determined to be a formal complaint. Okay? So you have a formal complaint, and at that point, you have the possibility of an informal resolution. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but that's the way it works. You can't have an informal resolution under these processes without a formal complaint.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay. And like I said in the workshops, it's a lot, an awful lot to digest.
I'll be glad when we-
When OCR has 2,000 pages of explanation,
Yeah.
you've got a lot going on.
Thank you.
Well, I just wanted to add, Rich, Katie Cornetto from your office was excellent to work with,
She really was.
really impressive.
And,
Great, thank you.
You know, for those of us on the policy committee, she spent a little over an hour walking us through every single policy. in giving us options and was very patient with our questions, and she did a
Good.
great job. Yes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you saying that. I'll let her know too.
Thank you. Okay, so any other questions? Okay, all right. We will move on to our new business. And the first item on our new business is a presentation that was sent in with a request to change mascots. And Dr. Parker, do you have that information for us? I mean, ready to?
I can hear you just fine. Thank you. Should I go ahead and share my screen? Okay. Can you see it okay? Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
These people local.
Okay, Madam Chairman, we have resumed the live feed of the internet now.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Parker. We're back online, is that correct? Yes, ma'am. Okay, and we want to welcome the group that's making a presentation this evening.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman Bass-Knight, and to the board for hearing our presentation. We're a group of alumni and Outer Banks residents whose aim is to discontinue the native mascots of the Redskins and the Braves. My name is Rachel Inslee, and I'm a linguist and an alum of Manio Middle and Manio High School. Our group has a petition advocating for the removal of the mascots with over 12,759 signatures from alums, locals, and non-locals. The complete petition, the list of signatures with places of residence, and a brief summarizing this issue and the body of research were submitted to the Board of Education for review in July. We'll now attempt to briefly summarize what is truly a complex issue. Race-based mascots simply should not exist. Redskins is a dictionary-defined racial slur with a horrific documented history. Braves encourages cultural appropriation by non-native students. No other race of people would be considered appropriate to be used as a mascot. The mascots normalize racial stereotyping. They distort history by portraying a false stereotype and generalized monolithic native culture. With almost 600 federally recognized tribes, you still somehow see a generic portrayal of indigenous culture in North America, and mascots greatly contribute to this misinformation. They harmfully and erroneously perpetuate the idea that all Native people only exist pre-1900, with portrayals being centered in a caricature of the past. They trivialize cultural identity and encourage appropriation. Furthermore, mascots are not a vehicle for honoring, and they do not educate. Educating and honoring should happen in curriculum, in community work, and in dialogue, in spaces where the goal is conversation instead of token representation.
Hello, my name is Holly Overton, and I'm a Rancho High School alum from NAGTED. The negative effects of Native mascots have been studied. More than 20 plus years of peer-reviewed research shows that Native mascots and related imagery have negative effects on Native students, including harm to social identity, self-esteem, and self-image. They also foster unwelcoming and hostile learning environments, affirming negative stereotypes. Negative effects on non-Native students by undermining the educational experience of those who have little to no contact with indigenous groups, fostering racial insensitivity, and promoting romanticized stereotyping. Dr. Stephanie Freiberg, a member of the Tulalip tribe and researcher on how race, class, and culture affect mental health and psychological development, has stated and proven that American Indian mascots are harmful not only because they are often negative, but because they remind American Indians of the limited ways in which others see them. This in turn restricts the number of ways American Indians can see themselves.
Hi, and this is Evan Harrison, Manual High School class of 03. We recognize that opinions about Native mascots vary among Native groups and people. That said, it's important to understand the scale and duration of opposition to Native mascots. The first Native organization shown here is the National Congress of American Indians. It is the oldest, largest, and most representative American Indian and Alaska Native advocacy organization. In 1968, they stated the following about Native mascots. Quote, "Rather than honoring Native peoples, these caricatures and stereotypes are harmful, perpetuate negative stereotypes of America's First Peoples, and contribute to a disregard for the personhood of Native peoples." You can see that many other Native groups, including those in our state, share this same position. Non-Native groups opposed to Native mascots include civil rights groups like the NAACP and National Urban League, and education groups like the NEA, and at our state level, the North Carolina Board of Education. This shows that opposition to Native mascots is connected to broader movements for racial justice and improved education.
We'd like to take a moment to address 3 opposing arguments frequently made by concerned community members. My grandmother was half Indian, and I don't find it offensive. If you do not have cultural lived experience as a Native American or do not face discrimination as a result, then you cannot speak to this harm. This is not a matter of opinion. There is research showing how this is harmful, and there is an overwhelming show of support from tribes and Native organizations against it. But the mascot honors local history. There is nothing in our region's history that references the words or mascots, redskins, and braves. These are not unique terms, and the imagery is based on generalized stereotypes. And the third argument against it, are you changing the name of the town too? The name of the town is specific and belongs to a single person and does not generalize or use a derogatory term. Here we include a small sampling of video statements, which, in addition to those statements from the brief and the petition signatories, we submit to the board.
The red skin does not inspire pride in everyone, especially my people. It needs to change. The redskin or chief mascot, the tomahawk chop, wearing the chief headdress, the war chant, and imitating Native American dance is offensive to our culture. The term and image of the mascot are racist because they historically referred to the scalp of a slain Native American sold for bounty. Racism is not okay. If ever there is a time to make a change, it is now. It's past time to change. We are a proud Native people, the first Americans, and not a mascot. Manteo High School would not be the first high school to change an outdated mascot because of tradition. If Washington can change it, Dare County can too.
I'm Rebecca McDonald. I went to Manteo Elementary, Middle, and High School, and I have 4 children. I believe that changing the name and mascot is necessary because I think that it's important that our youth today listens to others when they say that they're feeling uncomfortable or offended by something, especially when it comes to those whose cultures differ from our own. I think that by removing the images of what we think Native Americans should look like and pairing that with racial slurs, we could show respect and speak volumes by saying, hey, we're here, we're listening, we're sorry for offending you, and we want to show you respect by making those changes. This would be a great quality that our children could benefit from their entire lives, listening, adjusting, and respecting others.
Greetings, I'm Shanae Twitty, Manio High School class of 1999 and the director of Adair Minority Coalition out of Manio, North Carolina. I come from a long line of proud Manio High School graduates. As a minority, I understand the importance of letting go of racially inappropriate labels. We have to share this earth with people from many ethnicities and walks of life. We should do it with respect.
Hi there, my name is Oren Beasley and I graduated from Manio High School in 2004. I played football for both Manio Middle and High Schools for 6 years in total. Retiring the Manio Schools mascot is an opportunity to not only take a leading role in the fight against racism, but also to better serve the students and community at large. I would urge the school board to carefully consider this matter. Thank you.
Hi, I'm a parent of 3 Manio High School students. Natives across the land have advocated for the stop of using this term on non-native land and schools like Manio High School. This is their heritage, one built around suffrage. We have no right to use their heritage and suffrage like a costume. Please, let's stop. Me and my household have suggested Roanoke Raiders.
So in light of what we've just shared and these comments and support from alumni and community members, we think it's time to retire the Braves and Redskins mascots. After decades of debate, society is moving very quickly on this issue. In this LA Times article from July, you can see that Manio is literally on the map for the school's, quote, racist names. Change is happening rapidly. The Washington football team's decision is the highest profile, but the Cleveland Indians are also reevaluating their name. The NC Mascot Education and Action Group reports that 40 out of 73 of North Carolina schools with Native mascots have retired their mascots in the past 20 years. We hope that the Dare County Board of Education can help Manio Middle School and Manio High School be a part of this change, embrace the black and gold, and adopt a new mascot we can all be proud of. Thank you very much for listening and your time.
Dr. Parker, is that the end of the presentation? Yes, ma'am. Okay, is there, could you give us the name of the first community member who made the statement? I couldn't read it from here.
Rachel Inslee.
No, the first community member.
I'm sorry, from the video. The very first was Marilyn Barry Morrison, who is the chief of the Roanoke Hatteras tribe.
Marilyn, did you say Barry?
Morrison.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Barry Morrison, correct.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you very much. As we said, it was.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. It was a presentation for our board, and at this point, we have listened and we will take it under advisement. I know there were some public comments that wanted questions answered. I hope perhaps the presentation answered some questions, but I don't think we will be asking questions at this point. Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the next item under new business, which is the revised 2020-2021 academic calendar. In your notes, it's attachment 3. Dr. Farley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we have some slight changes to the current 2020-21 school calendar. First, we've removed what was the code of RL, remote learning days. As you know, the General Assembly mandated 5 of those. And since we've been in remote learning,
yeah, they're all remote learning.
Exactly. Right. And then, as I referenced earlier in announcements, September 28th was a required workday. And if we are back in school in some mode of traditional delivery on Election Day, which is November 3rd, we feel It's necessary since the Board of Elections is going to be using 5 of our gymnasiums to shift the workday to that day. The Board of Elections will have access solely to gymnasiums. The rest of the school will be secluded. And we will certainly, they've got a staging day, the second, the day on the 3rd when the community will come in and vote, and then they will wrap up the next morning. With having school potentially in session and with the significant amount of traffic, where we have parking lots that are already full on a normal school day, we feel it's best, all things considered, to swap out those 2 days with board approval. So the 28th for November 3rd is a required work day, and the removal of the remote learning days are the recommendations.
Madam Chair, I move we adopt the revised to the 2020-2021 academic calendar as requested by Dr. Farley.
Okay, there's a
Mrs.
motion by Mr. Twitty,
Madam Chair, I second that motion. Joe Tauber.
second by Mr. Tauber. Thank you. Is any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
And just one other question about that. We will be taking our 360 machine in to
Yes.
sanitize the building after Election Day, right?
Yes, so Mr. Gaganis will go in with his team, and we will go in and sanitize the gymnasium with our Clark's 360 machines and go through all our touch points and our process. And if there's any access and entryways, we would certainly do the same on handrails and so on and so forth.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. The next item under new business is the 4th Amendment to the superintendent's contract. Rich, did you want to address this, or do you want?
This amendment to the superintendent's, there we go. This amendment to the superintendent's contract is consistent with the motion that the board approved at its last meeting, directing the attorneys to develop this 4th Amendment to extend the term of the superintendent's contract through September 8, 2024, 4 years from today, which is the maximum you can go.
Madam Chair, I move we approve the 4th Amendment to the superintendent's contract as presented.
It's a motion
Margaret Lawler.
from Mrs. Lawler.
Second.
And a second from both Ms. Balance and Mr. Hester. Is any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, and I just want to thank the board for your support and confidence in the work that we're doing, and we're very appreciative.
We very much appreciate all that you have done. I know you and your administrative team have worked tirelessly to implement remote learning. I mean, you did it in the spring, and you've revved it up for the fall to make it as successful as it can be. So thank you. Okay, is there any other new business?
Yes. Harvey Hess.
Harvey Hess.
Speaking. With sincere compliments to the teachers, the parents, the students, all our staff, central office staff, administrators, and everybody else, I think that we can do better by our students, and I think we can move faster on getting our kids back in school. My reasoning aligns with the CDC, with the National Academy of Sciences, and I have references for all the information if anybody wants it later. Interaction is a critical component of the learning process, and that is interaction between students and also interactions between teachers and their students. And those of us that have been teachers and been in the classroom recognize that. Remote learning is not anywhere near what in-person learning is. Let me just read a couple of things here from the CDC. Parents are understandably concerned about the safety of their children at school in the wake of COVID. The best available evidence is if children become infected, they are far less likely to suffer severe symptoms. At the same time, the harms attributed to closed schools on the social, emotional, and behavioral health, economic well-being, and academic achievement of children in both short and long term are well known and significant. Further, the lack of in-person educational options disproportionately harms low-income and minority children and those living with disabilities. These students are far less likely to have the access to private instruction and care, and far more likely to rely on key school-supported resources like food programs, special education services, counseling, and after-school programs to meet basic needs. Aside from a child's home, no other setting has more influence on a child's health and well-being than their school. The in-person school environment does the following. It provides educational instruction, it supports the development of social and emotional skills, it creates a safe environment for learning, it addresses nutritional needs, and it facilitates physical activity for our children. During the H1N1 pandemic of April 15, 2009 to October 2nd, 2010, 358 pediatric deaths were reported to the CDC. Deaths of children so far in this pandemic are less than in the last 5 flu seasons, with only 64. Extended school closure is harmful to children. It can lead to severe learning loss, and the need for in-person instruction is particularly important for students with heightened behavioral needs. At Brown and Harvard universities, data showed that through late April, student progress in math had decreased by about half, with the negative impact more pronounced in low-income zip codes. Finally, remote learning makes absorbing information more difficult for students with disabilities, developmental delays, and other cognitive disabilities. Schools play a critical role in supporting the whole child, not just their academic achievement. In addition to structure for learning, schools provide a stable and secure environment for their developing social skills and peer relationships. Social interaction at school among school children in all grades is particularly important for the development of language, communication, social, emotional, and interpersonal skills. And in an in-person school environment, children more easily learn how to develop, maintain friendships, and how to behave in groups, and how to interact and form relationships with people outside their families. Additionally, extended closures can be harmful to children's mental health and can increase the likelihood that children engage in unhealthy behaviors. An environment where students feel safe and connected, such as school, is associated with lower levels of depression, thoughts about suicide, social anxiety, as well as higher levels of self-esteem and more adaptive use of free time. Another review published this year found that post-traumatic stress scores of children and parents in quarantine were 4 times higher than those not quarantined. In-person schooling provides children with the access to a variety of mental health and social issues, including speech, language therapy, and physical or occupational therapy to help the physical, psychological, and academic well-being of the child. For children with intellectual or physical disabilities, nearly all therapies and services are received through schools. These vital services are difficult to provide through different learning models. As a result, more children with disabilities have received few or no services while schools have been closed. When schools are closed, children lose access to important opportunities for physical activity. Many children may not be sufficiently physically active outside of the context of in-school physical education and other school-based activities, including recess, classroom engagements, and after-school programs. Schools are an important part of the infrastructure of our communities as they provide safe, supportive learning environments for students, employ teachers and other staff, and enable parents, guardians, and caregivers to work. Schools also provide critical services to help meet the needs of children and families, especially those who are disadvantaged. School closure disrupts the delivery of in-person instruction and critical services to children and families, which has negative individual and societal ramifications. The best evidence from countries that have opened schools indicates that COVID-19 poses low risk to school-aged children. Reopening schools creates opportunity to invest in an education, well-being, and future of one of America's greatest assets, our children, while taking every precaution to protect our students, teachers, and staff, and families. This is from the CDC. The American Academy of Sciences also recommends, dramatically recommends that K-5 students and all physically disabled children or have children with disabilities have in-person learning as well. With that in mind and understanding that people are doing the very best they can in a difficult situation, Madam Chair, I have a motion. I make a motion that starting on Monday, September 28th, 3 weeks from yesterday, all Dare County schools be open for in-person student learning on a, for in-person students learning for all K-5 students and all special needs on a regular 5-day school week, and that we address in-person learning for our 6-12 students no later than the next regularly scheduled meeting, if not sooner. Inherent in this motion is that we follow state health and safety guidelines. So that's my motion.
Okay, there is a motion on the floor for Mr. Hess,
Madam Chair, I second the motion, Joe Tauber.
and there's a second from Mr. Tauber. Is there any discussion?
I think,
We cannot have discussion.
Okay, would you like to start, Mr. Hester, the discussion?
Well, my first thought to that is, how practical is that from your vantage point, Dr. Berlin?
I think it depends what the model is.
According to his motion, the model would be K-5 and special needs 5 days a week. Is that correct?
And we have the facilities, we've already been over that, and with the 2.5, the amount of children that are in a classroom or in school has been enlarged, so people that can be in a classroom. But in this motion, this is K-5 and all students with special needs be meeting on a regular 5-day school week.
and then what about your high school kids?
What I said for those guys is that for now, 6 through 12, that we no later, that we address in-person learning for 6 through 12, no later than the next regularly scheduled meeting, and if not sooner. I recognize that.
Is that part of the motion?
That was part of the motion.
Okay, thanks you.
Yeah, and I'll read the motion back if somebody, I mean, I can do that if you need me to do it. If not sooner, and inherent in this motion is that we follow state health and safety guidelines as we have done all along.
Mr. Twitty?
Harvey, how about, let's looking at 4 days from your motion is we're going to have a board meeting, special meeting, discuss an opening on possibly for all, not K through 5, but for all Dare County School students as much as possible on the 26th of October with Dr. Farley and his staff giving us the guidelines from that point.
And that's a month further down the road.
No, it's 4 days.
No. Mine would start, they would start school on the 28th.
Right, but it's 4 days from the meeting that we will have to talk about the opening with a better plan than just coming up tonight and saying we're going to go school opening.
We've got 3 weeks from now to get school in motion, and I think that that's more than sufficient time. And I've talked to community members, I've talked to teachers, just like everybody else has here, and I've talked to a lot of parents, just like everybody else has here. And what I'm hearing is, please put our kids back in school. What I'm hearing from the CDC is, please put the kids back in school. What I hear from the National Academy of Science is, please put these kids back in school.
I want these kids back in school too.
Well,
I
then let's
certainly
get them
do.
back in
But
school.
I think that Dr. Farley and his team needs to come up with something for us. It's only 4 days waiting to give a better plan than what we have
I
now.
think they've been working on this since March, and 24/7 is what I hear over and over and over again. And so I'm thinking we've got enough plans and contingency plans in there to make this work. That's what my motion's about.
I understand,
Okay.
and my background is transportation. Dr. Farley, when the short time that we have here is Mr. Chandler, y'all been talking about transportation on starting the 28th of September?
No, we've not. September 28th is the first time that's been brought to the conversation. The difficulty with that timeline is many, particularly with staffing. And although the state has moved to 2.5, phase 2.5, the North Carolina guidelines for schools there's still capacity limits on classrooms. So in order to serve all of K-5, we would be stretching, and children in the Exceptional Children's Program, I believe, is that the phrase?
Part of the motion.
Part of the motion?
Yeah.
Okay.
K-5 students and all special needs children.
Okay.
In person.
Means that we would be stretching through elementary, middle, and high school to serve those children every single day. We would have to have a registration process for parents that still want to have virtual school. And we would also have to have a registration process for staff who want to continue to teach remote versus face-to-face instruction. So transportation, there would be a lot of work to do in a short amount of time, to your question around transportation, because we would have limits on the number of kids that could be on bus routes.
John, will we also have to bus kids away from their school if the classes are smaller?
Yes, so it's very likely, or it will happen, that students who are currently attending Kitty Hawk and N.C.G.S would have to go to other locations in the models that we built previously.
Is Margaret Lawler. Also, are we still limited to 12 students in a classroom? Or
Currently,
something
yes.
that's small? Okay.
But this is Joe Talbert, but those are going to be the same issues that we're going to be facing October 2nd as well. So I'm not sure it changes anything. This same question that Margaret Lawler just asked, and Dave Twitty and Frank Hester asked, are the same issues that are going to be in effect into October. So,
But there were other options.
Do we have
Yes,
teachers?
we do
right?
have options.
We have other options.
already.
We can send the kids, we can do the A-B group where everybody goes back 2 days a
K-12.
week.
It's
and
balanced
that
speaking.
will start when?
After if we have a discussion on the 5th and we come to an agreement that we're okay with that.
On the 2nd.
On the 2nd, sorry.
So are you suggesting that if Mr. Hester changed his motion to?
Mr. Hess.
Mr. Hess changes his motion to include the one that you just suggested, would that be satisfactory at this date?
Not at this date, because they need time to get ready for that.
You
3
need to
weeks,
direct that to
3 weeks
Tom.
sounds like a long time, but there's a lot of components to making sure that all comes off unhinged.
Is the 3 weeks still going to be in effect after October 2nd, or are we going to start after?
We would finish out the motion that we made, or what we voted on last time was to do the first 9 weeks remote. We start the second 9 weeks with a plan to get them back in school.
Madam Chair, David Twitty, since our last meeting, we have gone 0.5.
We
with
have,
that.
and
It was a 2.0, and it's been 2 weeks, and we're 2.5. So let's think about the positive way and saying 3, we're right on to the buff, you know. I still think going on that day, especially just prior to this motion by Mr. Harvey, that we were going to have a meeting on the 2nd of October anyhow.
I understand.
And we all, I don't know if any of us said not to. I think we were checking our calendars to make sure we could do it.
yes, I think we all agreed to
So-
October 2nd, 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
I have another question. Dr. Farley, if we are limited to 12 students in a class, do we have enough teachers to cover all those classes?
So that's complicated because the staffing is driven by the number of parents that want the virtual experience.
So we don't even.
So a
have-
registration process, so just for clarity and for the public that's listening, you know, the directive from the board was remote learning to through October 23rd. So that's what we have been planning for. And to your question, Ms. Lawler, we would have to determine first how many parents still want the virtual experience, and then we're going to have to figure out how we would staff a virtual school and still face-to-face instruction. And as I shared when we met on July 20th, one of our concerns with staffing is, well, there's a lot of concerns around staffing, but primarily, do we have enough certified staff to cover that array of classrooms across the district where we only have 12 kids in a classroom? So that's driven by whether parents opt for virtual or not.
Thank you.
Mr. Hess, this is B. Bass Knight. Did I hear you mention that something about the guidelines had changed in part of your comments?
Well, I mean, how many people can be in a room has changed
In a schoolroom, in a classroom?
from 2.5.
I don't think the governor addressed schools in his
Well,
latest address.
even so, if we go back, I mean, that's changed, but if we go back to looking at what we said originally when we went back and decided, we voted 5-2 to go remotely. If we had voted to go back to school at that point, we would have gone back to school, and I believe Dr. Farley made it clear that we could do that they had actually walked out and measured the classrooms and looked at the logistics, and that was doable. And that's what I remember him saying, and, you know.
So the options that we presented, so there was an every other week option.
Right.
There was the 2 days a week cohort option.
Right.
There was the remote option. Virtual has been on the table the entire time. And then there was several options that we had to rule out based upon an inability to staff.
So the 5 days a week option.
So with Mr. Hess's recommendation or nomination, it was pardon?
His
motion, excuse me, get my terminology down. If we were to have all K-5 students and children in the Exceptional Children's Program being served 5 days a week, then we would be in elementary, middle, and high school buildings and moving kids out of their attendance zone in order to serve them effectively. And it's still not clear to me with the concept of trying to plan for 6-12 what that actually looks like, so that's hard to speak to.
Well, I'll welcome a friendly amendment to my motion. I mean, you know, and that's, you know, something that I'm open to hearing, a friendly amendment to my motion. But what won't be acceptable is just for me as an amendment to my motion is just to pass on to what was voted on earlier, the next meeting, and then down the road from there.
But at the next, us having this next meeting, you guys are gonna start preparing now for what we could possibly do.
The board wants to have a special call
I
meeting.
mean,
so
they
yes,
aren't
I will start
prepared
preparing
now?
tomorrow.
I mean, with all.
No, because we
you know.
originally voted for the first 9 weeks remote. So
But-
now they
no,
have to switch
but-
gears.
But there was, but in there was that or sooner, when we came back to that. And that was at the end when that motion passed.
That was not in that original motion,
No, it
was it?
was not. It was taken out.
Well,
do we have a copy of the
regardless
motion?
of that, my motion
There's a motion
stands,
on
and
the
I
floor,
said
right?
that I welcome a friendly amendment if there is one. I believe we can do this. I believe we owe it to the students of Dare County. I believe that we owe it to our community members. And I know everybody here wants the best for our students in our community. I have no doubt of that whatsoever. But I think we can move faster than this, and I think that the situation puts us in a position where we can do it and that we should do it. And that's me.
I think you're right, Mr. Hessen, that everybody here wants what's best for our children, and I think as a teacher and as you know, parents and grandparents here, we all know in-person learning is the best, but we want to do it in the right way and the safe way, and in a way that is planned so that we have success.
teachers.
Okay. Any other comments in the discussion? Okay. All in favor of the motion made by Mr. Hess, please indicate by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye, Joe Tauber.
Okay.
Harvey Hess.
All opposed?
I'm Margaret Lawler.
P. Bass Knight.
David Woody.
Frank Kester.
Okay, motion is denied on a 5-2 vote. Okay. Anything else the board would like to bring forth? Well, in closing, I would like to say thank you to all the people who are still on the phone listening to us. We appreciate you very much. We thank you for all of you folks that made public comments. This board is always open to and willing to listen to any public comments, and I hope that all of those who are listening feel free to reach out to us as board members. I thank all of the board members for your commitment, because we've had a busy time with lots of comments coming in and comments tonight, and I know each of you gives every comment that you receive from people in the community, much consideration, and I personally appreciate that very much.
Madam Chair, I move we adjourn.
A motion by Ms. Lawler, a
Ms.
second by
Lawler.
Mr. Talbot. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Thank you all for a great meeting.